Hi everyone, Alex Tardy here with Weather Echo. We have got a insight for you. Tropical moisture moving up from the south, a tropical cyclone remnant actually, and a large Pacific storm. And this is a big storm, for this time of year, and it's going to be important where that heavy rain actually occurs on the track of this storm. So where it meets up with the tropical moisture. So let's take a look at an insight here for you. Okay, recent weather. Look at the wet conditions. We already had a similar setup with Pacific storm moving across Northern California, Northern Great Basin, and that drew in tropical moisture. Not from a tropical cyclone, but moisture. And we saw some really heavy rain. Areas like northern Utah had heavy rain and flooding. We also saw the first widespread mountain snowfall, yes, across the northern Rockies and Northern California. Rest of the United States was dry for the most part, except for off of Florida. Now, temperature-wise, really warm conditions, unprecedented conditions, and record-breaking conditions in the middle of the country. And we've been talking about this for a while and how this could continue through much of October, maybe even November. And some of that shifting to the east into New England now as we speak. Now, the far west, with the rain, clouds, precipitation, temperatures were actually average or even below average the past week. Okay, tropical cyclone. We call it a tropical cyclone because these tropical systems come in different stages: depressions, tropical storm, hurricane, category 1, 2, 3, etc. So, tropical cyclone includes all of those stages. Now, what's important is tropical cyclone Priscilla, that moisture, or at least part of that moisture, not the center, but part of that moisture, as it moves up across the Baja, is going to get caught up and entrained and drawn into this Pacific storm. So this will give some really high values of tropical moisture potential into southwest United States. Okay, how is this weather pattern going to work? Well, these two storms are completely independent, but a Pacific storm following a similar path as the past couple months is going to carve and break off from the main jet stream, not completely, but allow it to swing into Northern California. A lot like we've been seeing in the past several weeks. Now, similar to the most recent storm in this one actually has colder air and more energy. Now, independently, there's a tropical cyclone drifting up to the Baja coast. Now, when that Pacific storm gets close enough, they're going to feel each other. The moisture is going to get drawn up by the wind flow into that low pressure, into that storm track. So this pattern will be developing Wednesday through Friday. And once that tropical moisture makes it further north and that upper low pressure system makes it further south, the development of showers and thunderstorms can be quickly. Okay, what are we talking about? Well, now it's mostly dry. We've got a little bit of offshore flow. We're between and behind weather systems. But that tropical moisture by Thursday starts showing up. We've got moisture left over in New Mexico right now, unusually high levels, and we've got unusually high levels that'll creep up the Baja region as shown here with the arrow. And this will happen on Thursday. Now, when we get into Friday, that deeper moisture and a very sharp gradient by that arrow will determine where those showers and thunderstorms, new ones, not actual tropical cyclone, but new ones form on that edge as the Pacific storm starts to lift that moisture up, causing condensation, clouds, and rain. Now, where will the flooding occur? Well, it's likely to occur in those dark green shaded areas where we could see some torrential downpours. Now, I know that's a rather wide swath in Utah, Arizona, and far southeast California, but that will be the target zone on Friday. Now, Northern California won't be going dry. It'll have its own energy and moisture from that Pacific storm, just not the deep tropical moisture. Now, as we go through the week, October 11th and 12th, you can see that storm system will not remain closed off. It'll get caught back up in the jet stream and move across the northern Great Basin. So that'll be enough for some cold air, lower those snow levels, and then start shifting that really heavy rain this upcoming weekend more into the Rockies region and the Central Plains, following that black line. Now, we still keep a weak upper level low pressure area over Northern California but the deep moisture, that tropical moisture, will eject into the northern plains as shown here. Okay, and here's what we mean. So very sharp gradient by Saturday, edge of that moisture making it up to near the LA Basin area of Southern California, southern Nevada, and certainly most of Utah, and really bullseye on Arizona, and then eventually making up into Colorado and moving on to the central plains as well. Dark green means unusual high levels of moisture. And you can't just have moisture to have heavy rain. You got to have a way to force that precipitation to occur. That's what the Pacific storm will be the key player as the two meet up. Okay, now after that Pacific storm ejects into southern Canada, the northern plains, caught up in the black line of the main jet stream, we will look for the potential for some cold air coming down. At this time, the potential for inside sliders looks low, but some weak offshore flow could develop in mid to late October with a lot of energy kind of consolidated up along British Columbia and the Gulf of Alaska. And as shown on the right-hand side, by mid-October, a little bit of offshore flow, a lot like what we have now in Northern California. Okay, what about mid to late October? The warm weather pattern looks like it's going to rebuild over the middle of the United States for the rest of the month. So after the rainfall, after the precipitation and clouds. Now we also could see a return with that consolidated jet stream that I just showed you over the Pacific Northwest, taking aim in that region for wetter than usual conditions. Otherwise, most of the United States is either average or below average, except for maybe along the Gulf, where we see some moisture building end of October. Warm conditions in the middle of the country are really prevalent, and they kind of expand east and west as well. Now, what about as we go into the fall and maybe early winter, November, December? The jet stream looks like it's going to be focused on a similar track, the Pacific Northwest. Now, that brings dry conditions along the southern states, and it brings warm conditions along the southern states as shown here. Now, the wet pattern looks like it's going to be focused on the Pacific Northwest, but in December we've had indications on the past several weeks of computer model runs that we could get into a wet pattern, at least briefly, in December for much of the West. So that'll be very beneficial because overall this winter there may not be a lot of that. Okay, what about temperature? Continued, as I mentioned, in October, over the next couple weeks, returning to the middle of the country. Looks like November, December could be quite mild for most of the United States. But we do see blue showing up in December, and that'll be attributed to the dip in the jet stream with that black line tapping into some of that blue or really cold air. So it's going to take a while before we can get rid of a lot of this warm air that's built up this summer. But that could happen in December with a pretty big battle zone between unusually cold air in Canada along the US border and unusually warm air over much of the United States, as shown here on the right-hand side. Okay, what about the winter outlook? And we've been showing this the past couple months. Not a lot of changes. General jet stream coming from Alaska down into the Pacific Northwest, carving across the Great Lakes and the northern states for wetter than usual pattern there. Very mild weather overall for the 3-month period, December through February, over most of the United States, and pockets of really cold air building across Canada. And that jet stream that I'm showing on the left is capable of tapping into some of that for the northern states. And that'll also be important into stronger storms and especially snowstorms. Now look in the Pacific, down by Hawaii, still indications of tropical moisture, not a tropical cyclone necessarily, but tropical moisture energy being separated from the main jet stream because of an upper level ridge in the Pacific. That ridge blocks the weather pattern, pushes it further north, but also separates the two as shown here. So overall, that leads to drier conditions across California and even the southeast United States. So if we do get into wet patterns, they could be brief this upcoming winter for the West, especially for California. But a wet pattern for the northern Rockies, the Great Lakes region, northern plains, and maybe even northern New England. Okay, hope you enjoyed this weather insight. A lot going on still, especially with tropical moisture. That's been the theme the past couple months. And of course, the really warm conditions in the middle of the country and the dry conditions that have developed the second half of the summer in the eastern United States. All right, everyone, check out other information on X, TikTok, and shorter videos on YouTube. And of course, sign up for our blog. We're also posting information there about all this active weather. Stay safe, everyone.